He was the most powerful man on Earth, yet he faced war, plague, and chaos he couldn't control. So today, we're going to dive into the private operating system of the Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius, a system he built not to conquer the world, but to master his own mind. You see, this wasn't some philosophy for quiet moments, it was a hardcore, practical toolkit for resilience. Let's break down how he built it.
So here's how we're going to break this down. We're going to start in the chaos of a military tent where his whole philosophy was really forged in fire. Then we'll get into his surprising struggle. It wasn't against poverty, but against absolute power itself. From there, we'll uncover the blueprint for his inner citadel, that unbreachable fortress of the mind. After we get the what, we'll dig into the how, the practical three-part daily routine he used. Then we'll look at the incredible legacy this private journal left for all of us, before finally, and most importantly, translating his ancient operating system into a tool you can actually use in your own life.
All right, to really get this guy, we have to understand the moment that defined him. And you can forget the marble halls of Rome. Our story begins in a much, much harsher place. A cold, wind-battered tent on the crumbling edge of the Roman Empire. So picture this. The year is AD 17. Marcus Aurelius is bogged down on the Danube frontier. He's not a philosopher here. He's a commander-in-chief in a brutal, endless war. And a far deadlier enemy has snuck into his empire. The Antonine Plague is just ripping through his legions and the cities back home. I mean, this is the ultimate paradox of power, right? He could command armies, move mountains of resources. His word was literally law. But he was completely powerless to stop a tiny virus, to stop the suffering of his people, or to even stop his own grief. So, faced with this total external collapse, what does he do? He makes this profound strategic pivot. He turns inward. He realizes that a new battle plan from his generals isn't going to fix this. Instead, he picks up his private journal, a simple book that we now know as Meditations. And this wasn't an act of surrender. Oh no, it was a declaration of a different kind of war. His new mission was crystal clear. If he couldn't control the world outside, he would forge absolute, unshakable control over the world inside.
And this quote just nails it, doesn't it? This wasn't some nice thought for a quiet afternoon. This was a direct, life-altering command to himself. Right there, in the middle of all that chaos, he decided to stop merely talking about what makes a good person and to simply be one. This choice became the foundation for everything that followed. But to really get this discipline, we need to look at the unique struggle he faced long before he ever set foot in that tent.
You see, Marcus Aurelius' discipline wasn't born from hardship in the way we usually think about it. His main struggle wasn't poverty or being ignored. It was the exact opposite. It was a constant battle against the moral and intellectual arrogance that comes with having absolute power.
I mean, from the moment he was born, this guy was groomed for absolute power. But, and this is so crucial, his education wasn't just in military strategy and politics. It was steeped in Stoic philosophy, and his most important teacher was a man named Epictetus, who was a former slave. Just pause and think about that contrast for a second. The future absolute ruler of the known world learning about freedom from a man who was once legally considered property? It was from Epictetus that Marcus got his mental anchor, a powerfully simple idea called the Dichotomy of Control. And this one principle let him completely reframe his entire reign. He stopped seeing chaos as a problem to be solved, and he started seeing it as his personal training ground, like a gym for the soul, where every setback was just a new chance to practice virtue.
And this distinction, well, it was everything. He learned to meticulously separate the entire world into two simple buckets, things that were truly up to him and things that were not. This clear mental map became his guide. It allowed him to see his immense power not as a ticket to luxury and pleasure, but as this overwhelming duty to master the few things he truly owned, his own thoughts and his own actions. This wasn't just some philosophy he thought about. It was the operating system he ran his entire life on.
Okay, so this brings us to the core of his whole mindset, the unbreachable inner citadel. The central rule of this fortress is simple, but its implications are absolutely profound. Control what you can. Let's break down exactly what that looks like.
This right here, this is the entire playbook, the heart of his operating system. On the left, you see everything Marcus systematically decided to treat as external, as things he couldn't control. War, plague, what other people thought of him, luck, fate, you name it. Now, he didn't ignore them, but he refused to give them emotional power over him. On the right, you see the only three things he believed truly belonged to him: his judgments about events, his reactions to those events, and the quality of his character and his intent. By consciously stripping power and attention from that column on the left, he could pour all of his energy into mastering the column on the right. That, right there, is the essence of Stoic power.
And the whole goal of this practice? It's a state the Stoics called Apatheia. And this is a really critical concept to get right. It's often mistranslated as apathy, as if the goal is to feel nothing. That is completely wrong. Apatheia is a state of profound emotional resilience, an inner stillness that comes from getting rid of irrational distress. It's not about being emotionless, it's about not being yanked around by your emotions. It is pure strength.
Which brings us back to that metaphor of the inner citadel. Marcus viewed his mind as a literal fortress. So imagine something happens, a subordinate challenges you, or you get bad news from the front. That event is like a frantic messenger banging on the gates of your fortress. Now, before he just let it inside to cause panic, the guard at the gate, your rational mind, has to stop it and ask a few questions. Is this true? Is this actually important? Is doing something about it within my control? Only after that rational audit do you decide whether to let it in. He deeply believed that nothing could harm you emotionally without your conscious permission. You are the one who opens the gate.
So that's the what of the philosophy. But how did he actually do it? He didn't just hope to be virtuous. He built a disciplined daily system to practice it. This is where the theory becomes real action.
So his day began not with positive affirmations, but with a practice called Premeditatio Malorum, literally the premeditation of evils. Now this sounds incredibly pessimistic, I know, but it's actually deeply strategic. First thing in the morning, he would sit and intentionally visualize the frustrating people and events he was likely to run into. He'd literally tell himself, today I'm going to meet with meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, and dishonest people. Why would he do that? Because by anticipating and accepting these things in advance, he was performing a kind of psychological inoculation. He was prepping his emotional immune system for reality. So when that arrogant person inevitably showed up, they had no power to surprise or anger him, because he'd already prepared for it. The second part was a constant, real-time practice he ran all day long, the analysis of impression. The very moment he felt a harsh emotion rising, a flash of anger at a general, frustration with the report, anxiety about the plague, he would immediately interrupt the thought. He'd hit a mental pause button and ask one critical question. Is my distress caused by the event itself, or is it caused by my judgment of the event? You see, the report isn't inherently bad. His judgment that it's a disaster is the problem. And almost always the answer was his judgment. And this is the magic part. If the problem was his judgment, then it was within his control, and he believed he had the power to simply withhold it or erase it. This practice creates that vital gap between stimulus and response, that little space where reason can take over from pure reaction. And finally, his day ended with the evening audit. Before sleep, he would review his day, but with a very specific focus. He wasn't interested in his outcomes. Did I win the battle? Did I get what I wanted? No, that was external. Instead, he reviewed his actions, the one thing he truly controlled. He would ask himself, where did I fail my own principles today? Did I complain when it was useless? Was I just and fair to everyone? Was there a moment where I let emotion override my reason? This daily, systematic review was his way of debugging his own character. It ensured he was always getting a little bit better, moving toward his true goal, not to be a successful emperor, but to be a good man. So, what's the result of all of this? Well, this intensely personal, private practice ended up creating a timeless and universal legacy. Let's shift our focus to how this routine transformed not just the man, but our whole understanding of leadership and resilience.
And here we find the beautiful irony of his work. The book we call Meditations was never, ever meant to be published. It was his private workbook, his personal cognitive therapy journal. It was just a collection of commands, tough questions, and reminders to himself. The fact that it was never intended for an audience is precisely what makes it so authentic and so powerful. We're not reading some polished philosophical treatise, we're reading the raw, unfiltered thoughts of one of history's most powerful men, just trying to be good while the world was crumbling around him.
His life and his journal really transformed our idea of power. He proved that a leader could maintain virtue and rational judgment even in the darkest of times. He basically democratized resilience, showing that the tools for inner peace aren't just for emperors or philosophers, but are there for anyone willing to do the work. He taught us that obstacles aren't in the way. They are the way, just raw material for building character. And maybe most importantly, he redefined freedom, not as the ability to do whatever you want, but as an internal state, completely independent of whatever is happening around you.
And that right there is where this ancient story becomes a practical guide for us, right here, right now. This isn't just a history lesson.
It's an invitation to apply this powerful operating system to our own modern lives.
If you take one thing away from this, let it be this. Your greatest power, your only true freedom, is your ability to choose what you give your attention to. This means committing, every single day, to that dichotomy of control. It means making a conscious choice to stop wasting precious mental and emotional energy on things you can't influence, the 24-hour news cycle, what strangers on the internet think of you, the economy, and to redirect all that focus back to what you own, your effort, your judgment, and your character.
I want you to really think about this question as you go about your day. When you feel that spark of frustration or anxiety or anger, just pause and ask yourself, is the source of this feeling in my control or not? Can I change the event, or can I only change my response to it? That one question is the key that unlocks the inner citadel.
At his core, Marcus Aurelius was a meticulous student of his own character. His greatest weapon wasn't his army, it was the dichotomy of control. His Stoic routine wasn't about suppressing life, it was about building a foundation of unshakable inner peace, right in the middle of life's chaos. He left behind a legacy that reminds us that our commitment to rational virtue is the only true path to calm and clarity. Because in the end, the fortress that matters most is the one you build within. The only person who can truly harm you is the person who lives inside your own head.